The lights blinded me the moment I stepped onto the stage. Thousands of faces blurred together under the golden glare of the chandeliers, cameras flashing like fireflies in a summer dusk. The MC's voice still echoed faintly from the speakers. And please welcome our keynote speaker, founder of StockBuddy, and inspiration to entrepreneurs everywhere, Jason Miller. I gripped the microphone, feeling its weight solid and familiar in my palm. This was it. This was the moment I used to dream about. Or, to be more honest, the moment I used to think could never, ever belong to someone like me. I smiled outwardly, steady and calm. Inside, my mind raced backward. It raced past the velvet curtains, past the adoring applause, past the article headlines that now called me a genius. It raced back to cold nights in a crumbling apartment, to soggy sneakers, to greasy diner tables I wiped for tips barely big enough for a sandwich, to the snickering classmates who said I'd be lucky to make it past minimum wage, to the teachers who glanced at me like I was a hopeless case. I remembered all of them, every word, every sneer, every shrug. Those memories weren't baggage anymore. They were bricks I had used to build this very moment. When people doubted me, they weren't closing the door on my future. They were handing me the wood and nails, and I had built a damn empire. "Good evening," I said, my voice steady as the applause finally softened. "Tonight, I want to tell you a story. Not about success, not even about failure, but about what happens when you stop listening to the noise and start listening to yourself." The room leaned in, and I began. If you had met me 5 years ago, you wouldn't have looked twice. Maybe you would have noticed the scuffed sneakers, or the patched jacket that didn't quite fight off the winter wind. More likely, you wouldn't have noticed me at all. I was 21, fresh out of a community college nobody respected, dragging myself through 12-hour shifts at a greasy diner called Joe's Place. The pay was minimum wage plus tips, tips that barely covered my half of the rent in a crumbling apartment above a laundromat that always smelled of mildew. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I didn't even have a 5-day plan. Every morning, I'd stumble out of bed before the sun, lace up my shoes with frayed laces, and pedal my beat-up bicycle 3 miles to Joe's. My coworkers, the few that stuck around, were mostly like me, tired, broke, running on coffee and desperation. But some were worse. There was Marcus, who had worked at Joe's for 17 years and still talked like the big promotion was coming any day now. There was Tanya, who spent her tips on scratch tickets and swore she was just one win away from freedom. And there was me, the invisible one, the one nobody thought would ever leave. I wasn't stupid. I heard what people said behind my back, even when they thought I wasn't listening. "Jason, that kid's a lifer. Poor guy peaked in high school. Bet you $5 he's still slinging hash browns when he's 40. Sometimes it came from the customers, sometimes from the managers, sometimes from the so-called friends who'd once sat beside me in homeroom, full of big dreams and easy laughter. It didn't matter. The words sank into my skin like cold rain. And over time, they started to feel true. The worst day came in early March. The air was so cold it cracked my lips the moment I stepped outside. My bike chain snapped halfway to work, sending me tumbling into a slush puddle. I arrived late, soaked and shivering, just in time for Joe to ream me out in front of a full dining room. "Maybe if you weren't so damn lazy, you wouldn't screw up everything you touch," he bellowed, his red face inches from mine. Laughter rippled through the customers. A few even clapped. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I apologized, wiped the mud off my jeans, tied on my apron, and went back to work. Because what else could I do? That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, nursing a sprained wrist and a bruised ego. The heater rattled feebly in the corner. Mice scratched behind the peeling walls. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, at the tired eyes, the slumped shoulders, and for the first time in my life, I whispered the truth out loud. I can't live like this forever. The words felt foreign, dangerous, because admitting I wasn't okay meant admitting I had to do something about it. And doing something meant risking even more failure. But the thought of spending the next 30 years dodging angry managers and broken bike chains scared me more. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when. But somewhere deep inside, under all the exhaustion and fear, something stubborn sparked. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not without a fight. The idea didn't come to me in a flash of brilliance. It wasn't some Hollywood eureka moment. It started with a chipped mug, a grumpy customer, and a YouTube video I half-watched on my phone during my lunch break. The customer, an older man with a salt and pepper beard and a sharp suit, had been tapping impatiently at the counter. "Can't even get a clean mug around here," he grumbled loudly when I poured his coffee. I mumbled an apology, cheeks burning, and rushed to the back to find a replacement. But as I scrubbed the dishes, my mind drifted. That morning, I'd stumbled across a video titled, "10 Businesses You Can Start with $100 or Less." It sounded ridiculous. I didn't even have $100 to spare. But something about it hooked me. The guy in the video, a scrappy-looking entrepreneur with messy hair and a crooked smile, talked about micro-businesses, tiny services, side hustles, ways to earn without needing a fancy degree or venture capital. One example stuck with me. "Find a problem people complain about," he said, jabbing a finger at the camera, "and offer them a solution they can't refuse." Simple, obvious, but powerful. That night, after my shift, I sat at my wobbly kitchen table, a battered notebook open in front of me. I wrote one sentence at the top of the page: "Find a problem, solve it." I made a list underneath. It wasn't elegant. People hate waiting for repairs. Nobody likes doing taxes. Dog owners complain about expensive groomers. Parents want safe tutors for their kids. Problem after problem, pages filled. Most of it was junk. But hidden among the scrawls, a seed took root. I remembered how often customers, not just at Joe's, but everywhere, complained about money, about how confusing investing was, about how they wished they had someone to just tell them what to do. I didn't know much about investing, but I did know how to learn. And suddenly, I wondered, what if I could make it simple for people? What if I could be the bridge between regular folks and the complicated world of money? It was stupid. It was crazy. I was a broke diner worker, not a financial wizard. But the more I thought about it, the more the idea grew teeth. Over the next few weeks, I devoured everything I could find about personal finance. Free online courses, library books, podcasts on the bus, articles during my 15-minute lunch breaks. I stopped scrolling mindlessly through social media. I stopped wasting my few free hours playing video games. Instead, I studied. I learned about budgeting, about compounding interest, about simple index funds and dollar-cost averaging. I wasn't trying to be the next Wolf of Wall Street. I just wanted to understand enough to help people like me, people who didn't have fancy degrees or trust funds, people who lived paycheck to paycheck and still dreamed of a better life. The more I learned, the angrier I became, because the information wasn't complicated. It wasn't hidden in some elite vault. It was out there, accessible, but buried under jargon, intimidation, and fear. Banks and investment firms made it seem impossible on purpose. If regular people felt too stupid or overwhelmed to manage their own money, they'd keep paying the experts forever. It was a rigged game. And I was tired of playing by their rules. In early May, I launched the roughest, ugliest blog the world had ever seen. I called it Stock Buddy, a place where I broke down financial advice in plain English. No fancy charts, no suits, no BS. Just honest, simple explanations. How to open a savings account, how to invest your first $100, how to get out of credit card debt without selling a kidney. I didn't have a marketing budget. I didn't even have a real computer, just a secondhand Chromebook I bought off Craigslist for $40. But I had passion. And slowly, painfully, word started to spread. First it was a coworker, Tanya, who asked me how she could start saving for her kid's college fund. Then it was Marcus, asking sheepishly if I could explain how a 401k worked. Then a neighbor, then a friend of a friend. I wasn't making money yet. In fact, I was still broke. still hustling double shifts at Joe's, still fixing my bike chain with duct tape and prayer. But for the first time in years, I felt something stronger than exhaustion. I felt purpose. I felt hope. And deep down, buried under layers of doubt, I started to feel something even more dangerous. Belief. The hustle wasn't glamorous. It was gritty, ugly, lonely. Every spare minute outside of Joe's went into stock buddy. In the early days, traffic was laughable. Some nights, I'd log into the dashboard and see 3 views, one of them probably my own. I'd pour hours into writing articles, filming quick how-to videos on my cracked phone, or answering desperate emails from readers struggling with student loans or credit card traps. The money? Zero. If anything, it was costing me. Hosting fees, data charges, buying the occasional cheap coffee just to use the Wi-Fi at a cafe when my internet got cut off. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered the old Jason. The Jason who thought a diner shift and a soggy bike ride were all he deserved. I refused to go back. Not now. Not ever. The first break came when a local podcast host stumbled across one of my articles titled, "Why Your Bank Doesn't Want You to Know About Index Funds." He sent me a DM. "Hey, loved your no BS style. Want to come on my show and talk about it?" I almost said no. Who would want to hear from me? I wasn't a real expert. But then I remembered something else from that scrappy entrepreneur video. Say yes first. Figure it out later. So I said yes. I borrowed a decent shirt from Marcus, practiced answers in front of the bathroom mirror, and showed up at the tiny podcast studio with my heart hammering against my ribs. The interview wasn't perfect. I stumbled over words. I sweated through my borrowed shirt. But I spoke from the heart, and people listened. The podcast episode blew up locally. Nothing viral, but enough to triple my website traffic overnight. More importantly, it brought new readers, real people, emailing me with real questions. I have $300 saved. Where should I start? Is it too late for someone like me? Can I trust my financial advisor? Each email felt like a lifeline tossed across a stormy sea. They trusted me, and I wasn't about to let them drown. I doubled down, started offering free Zoom workshops on budgeting and investing basics. At first, it was just 5 people, then 10, then 20. I didn't charge a dime. I didn't have fancy software or polished PowerPoints, just a Chromebook, a hand-drawn whiteboard, and an endless willingness to explain things 3 different ways until people really understood. Slowly, credibility grew. Tanya invited her sister. Marcus told his bowling league buddies. One night, a woman from 3 states away logged into the workshop. "Saw your blog from a Facebook group," she said, smiling shyly. "Hope that's okay." I wanted to laugh, not in mockery, but in amazement. It was working. Word of mouth, the oldest marketing tool in the book, was carrying me forward. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Joe, my boss at the diner, caught wind of what I was doing. He wasn't impressed. "You think you're some hotshot now?" he sneered one night after a double shift. "Kid, you'll be back here begging for hours in 6 months." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Joe wasn't the enemy. He was just another prisoner of the same small world thinking I was fighting to escape. Still, it stung. It always did. No matter how far I ran, the echoes of doubt chased me. "You'll never make it. You're wasting your time. You're not special." The trick, I realized, wasn't silencing those voices. It was learning to work anyway, to build anyway, to believe anyway, even, especially, when nobody else did. Money remained tight. I sold my bike and took the bus to save on repairs. I canceled my streaming subscriptions. I ate oatmeal twice a day and counted every coin like it was a sacred relic. But slowly, StockBuddy started to grow teeth. First, an online personal finance site offered me $50 to syndicate one of my blog posts. Then, a company that sold budgeting software reached out. "We love your style. Would you consider becoming an affiliate?" It wasn't a huge deal, a small commission every time someone bought through my link. But it was something. A flicker of fire. Proof that maybe, just maybe, this could become more than a side hustle. I set a goal. Quit Joe's by Christmas. It was July. That gave me 5 months. 5 months to replace enough income to survive. 5 months to prove, to myself more than anyone, that betting on my own dreams wasn't the stupidest thing I'd ever done. 5 months to become someone nobody would ever dare laugh at again. And for the first time in my life, the thought didn't scare me. It thrilled me. By September, things started to shift in a way I couldn't ignore. The emails weren't trickling in anymore. They were flooding, dozens a day, from teachers, single parents, truck drivers, college kids, all asking the same kinds of questions. Can I trust this investment app? Should I consolidate my loans? Is it too late to start saving? And for the first time, I couldn't keep up. I'd be wiping down tables at Joe's while my phone buzzed endlessly in my apron pocket. During breaks, I'd sneak out back and try to respond to as many messages as I could, fingers flying over the cracked screen. Eventually, I had to admit it. StockBuddy wasn't a blog anymore. It was becoming a business. And I had to treat it like one. I spent an entire weekend converting the blog into a proper site. Hired a college kid from Fiverr to clean up the design, set up an email list, created a free downloadable budgeting starter kit, added a simple book a call button for one-on-one consultations. The calls terrified me at first. Who was I to advise people? But I kept it simple. I never promised magic. I never claimed to be a guru. I just listened, shared what I'd learned, pointed people toward tools that worked. To my surprise, they kept booking. Then they started paying. Some insisted on Venmoing me a tip. Others asked if I could do a package deal for multiple sessions. By mid-October, I was making more in consultation fees and affiliate income than I was working 40 hours at Joe's. It didn't feel real, but the numbers didn't lie. I was building something, from scratch, with nothing but a beat-up Chromebook, brutal honesty, and sheer willpower. I handed in my notice on a rainy Tuesday morning. Joe didn't say much, just nodded, like he always knew this would happen, but didn't want to admit it. "You'll be back," he said, not unkindly. "Everyone thinks they're special until the world humbles them." I didn't get mad. I just smiled. "Maybe, but I'm betting it won't be this time." I walked out of Joe's diner with no plan B, no safety net, but more peace than I'd ever felt. November was chaos. Good chaos. I partnered with a nonprofit that supported underbanked families and offered to run free workshops at their community center. The first one was standing room only. By the third, we had a wait list. I launched a YouTube channel, raw and scrappy, just like the blog, and shared tips like how I saved $1,000 on a $2,000 income, the investment trick they never taught you in school, credit scores, what you actually need to know. No fluff, no fear tactics, just facts and encouragement. One of the videos hit 50,000 views in a week. My email list exploded. So did my confidence. Suddenly, I was on podcasts regularly, speaking at small events, getting DMs from people I used to look up to. Some days I still ate oatmeal twice. Some days I still panicked when rent was due. But something wild was happening. I was becoming the person people turned to. Me, the kid they said would fail. The one who once got laughed out of a classroom for asking if dividends were like interest. December came. Cold, crisp, beautiful. I hit my quit Joe's goal with time to spare. But more than that, something even bigger happened. I got an email from Business Brains Weekly, one of the most respected finance newsletters online. They wanted to do a profile on me. "Your story's inspiring," the editor wrote. "We'd love to hear how you went from a diner to a rising financial voice." I nearly dropped my coffee when I read it. We set up the interview for the following week. When it went live, the response was overwhelming. Traffic to StockBuddy quadrupled overnight. I got hundreds of new subscribers. Major fintech startups reached out to collaborate. And I got my first six-figure sponsorship offer for an online workshop series. I didn't take it, not yet. But I framed the email. It wasn't about the money, it was about the proof. The world no longer ignored me. They were listening. I sat alone on Christmas Eve in my apartment, a small cup of cocoa in hand, watching soft snow fall outside my window. The silence was perfect. I didn't have a tree, didn't have fancy lights or gifts, but I had something better. A life I built with my own hands, a mission that mattered, and a voice that was finally being heard. They all said I would fail. Now they were begging for my help, and I wasn't bitter, not even a little, because I knew how it felt to be ignored, to feel stupid, to feel stuck, and I had no intention of shutting the door behind me. January ushered in a new year, but for me, it felt like the beginning of a whole new life. StockBuddy wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I had over 20,000 email subscribers, over 100,000 YouTube followers, and offers, real, serious offers, from publishers, companies, and conferences. For once, I could breathe. I could pay rent without panicking. I could donate to causes I cared about. I could help my mom fix the leaky roof that had been dripping since I was a kid. But most importantly, I could choose how to spend my days. I no longer lived by a boss's schedule. I no longer needed permission to dream. One cold morning in February, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something nudged me to answer. "Jason?" A familiar voice crackled through the line. "It's Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, my old economics teacher. The same man who, years ago, chuckled when I struggled to explain what a mutual fund was." Hi, Mr. Bennett," I said cautiously. "Listen," he said. "I heard about what you're doing. Your website, your YouTube channel, your workshops." I held my breath. "I was wondering," he hesitated, "would you consider speaking at the school's career day? We'd love for the students to hear from someone. Well, someone who built something real." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. This man, the one who once thought I was destined for nothing more than flipping burgers, was asking me to come back and inspire his students? The irony was almost too much. I wanted to say no, to hang up and laugh, and call Marcus to tell him the universe had officially lost its mind. But then I remembered. This wasn't about Mr. Bennett, or proving anything to anyone. It was about the kids sitting in those plastic chairs. Kids who were being told, just like I once was, that their dreams were too big, too unrealistic, too silly. They needed someone to look them in the eye and say, "You're not crazy for wanting more." So I said yes. Career Day was surreal. Walking through the halls of my old high school, memories flooded me, good and bad. The smell of cafeteria pizza, the sound of sneakers squeaking on gym floors, the familiar anxiety bubbling up whenever I walked into a classroom. Mr. Bennett met me at the entrance. He looked older, tired, but he smiled warmly and shook my hand with surprising strength. "I'm glad you're here, Jason," he said. "These kids need someone real." Real. That word stuck with me. I stood at the front of a crowded auditorium, heart hammering against my ribs, staring out at a sea of skeptical teenage faces. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself. The look that said, "Sure, easy for you to say. What about me?" So I told them the truth. Not the polished, Instagram-friendly version. The real story. I told them about the bike rides in the rain, about burning my fingers on greasy grills, about watching the zeros in my bank account line up, not on the right side. I told them how everyone, even the people closest to me, believed I would fail. And I told them how I succeeded anyway, not because I was smarter, not because I got lucky, but because I refused to quit. Because every time the world said, "You can't," I whispered back, "Watch me." When I finished, there was silence. For a terrifying second, I thought maybe I'd blown it. But then, a ripple of applause, then louder still. Students clapping, cheering, some standing. Mr. Bennett wiped his eyes and gave me a small, proud nod. I smiled, not out of pride, but out of pure, bone-deep gratitude. Because in that moment, I realized something important. I hadn't succeeded despite the people who doubted me. I had succeeded because of them. Their disbelief became my fuel. Their laughter became my motivation. Their dismissals became the foundation I built my empire upon. After the talk, students crowded around me, peppering me with questions. How do I start investing if I only have $20? What's the best side hustle for a college kid? Can you really retire early if you don't make six figures? I stayed until the janitor turned the lights off, and when I finally left, my heart was so full it hurt. That night, back in my tiny apartment, still modest, still humble, I wrote a blog post. It was called, "Everyone Said I Would Fail. Now They Beg for My Help." I told the story, every messy, painful, beautiful piece of it, and at the end, I left a message for anyone who might stumble across it years later, wondering if they were crazy for believing in themselves. If no one believes in you, believe in yourself anyway. If no one claps for you, clap for yourself anyway. If no one opens a door for you, kick it down anyway. Because someday, the ones who doubted you will ask how you did it. And when they do, you'll smile. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of the deep, unshakable joy of knowing you were always enough, exactly as you are. I hit publish, turned off my laptop, and sat in the quiet, staring out at the city lights, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not desperation, not even triumph, just peace. Deep, final, earned. And I knew, no matter what happened next, I had already won. Because I'd bet on myself. And for once, I was right.